There are a lot of mysteries in Five Nights at Freddy's that don't actually matter that much. Like, there are parts of this timeline that elude us even throughout this entire franchise that, even if we solved, wouldn't really help the major timeline in any way. It's just some cool side information at best. But regardless, a mystery is a mystery, and it's worth solving just for the sake of knowing if we can. So what would be a clear-cut, perfect example of this? A mystery that's 10 years old that we still have no clue on the actual answer to, but even if we solve it, it doesn't super change anything.
Was that the bite of 87?
Because, yeah, if we find out who did the bite of 87 and what the context was, will that solve the timeline? No. But it'll help flesh out our timelines when making one. So it's worth talking about, especially when new information comes to light that maybe solved it for us. And that new information is from, you guessed it, the week before. So, slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. So, what do we actually know about the bite of 87? Well, first of all, it's mentioned in the very first FNAF game, on the very first night, in the very first phone call. So, it's literally one of the first mysteries of this entire franchise. But in that voicemail, Phone Guy, or Ralph as we now know, says this.
They used to be allowed to walk around during the day, too. But then there was the bite of 87. Yeah. It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
And this one line gives us a lot, and frankly, all of our information about the bite of 87. First of all, it happened in 1987, which pretty definitively makes it have to take place at the FNAF 2 location, because as far as we're aware, that was the only Freddy's restaurant open in that year. But furthermore, it must have happened during the day shift while the animatronics were free roaming. After all, this bite caused Fazbear to not allow the animatronics to free roam during the day anymore. Makes sense. We also know that this bite destroyed somebody's frontal lobe, but it didn't end up killing them. And that is kind of it. It's a lot of information, but that's all we have. So the question is, what animatronic did the bite of 87 and why? Still no end in sight. Wait, what's that? Is it a map? Wait, no. It's a sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Rocket Money. My wife and I have been saving up for a house for a while now, but we really tried to buckle down these past few months. We're trying to balance our budget and our expenses to make this happen. Well, today's sponsor, Rocket Money, is here to help. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. I'm using Rocket Money to go through the subscriptions that I may or may not know I even have anymore, and canceling the ones I don't use. Last year I got Peacock to watch the FNAF movie, and I only really used it for that. I forgot I even had it anymore. But when I started using Rocket Money, it identified my recurring charges and found that Peacock subscription. It even helped me cancel it within the app. All I had to do is press a few buttons. I'm also using Rocket Money to set a new budget for my wife and I. We've tried doing budgeting by paper before, and while it helped us plan something out, it didn't help us stick to that plan. Rocket Money is able to analyze our spending habits and categorize them. It can even notify us when we go past our spending limits in specific categories. Rocket Money has helped save its customers up to $740 a year, with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. To save more and spend less, join the over 5 million members using Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/rytoast or click the link in the description to get started for free. You can also unlock even more features with premium. That's rocketmoney.com/rytoast to get started for free. Thanks again to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. No map. I guess a map wouldn't really help in a desert like this anyway. I need like a compass or something. There's been plenty of speculation throughout the years, mainly when FNAF 2 came out. One of the most common theories is that Mangle is the culprit. Realistically, the main reason why Mangle is seen as a culprit for the bite of 87 is just the angle of her jump scare. I mean, he comes down from the ceiling and bites you in the forehead, which is where the frontal lobe is located. So I get it, it makes sense, and she has a massive jaw. But realistically, that is the only thing linking him to the bite of 87. Actually, some newer theories I've seen around is that Toy Chica is the culprit of the bite of 87. And this mainly comes from her Ultimate Custom Night dialogue lines, where she says,
"Where's my beak?" "Lodged in your forehead, of course."
And yeah, that's suspicious. Not to mention in FNAF 2, she removes her beak to expose her toothy mouth underneath. And Scott's even called attention to her removing her beak, so this might be why. So it's a decent theory, and besides these two, I've heard plenty of theories of pretty much every other FNAF 2 animatronic since the game's been out, mainly because we really don't have any solid evidence linking a specific animatronic to the Bite of 87, let alone a reason why. So what happened? What information has come out that leads us to a better conclusion? Well, The Week Before was published. In case you missed last week's video, The Week Before is the first full volume in a new series of Five Nights at Freddy's interactive novels, FNAF's take on choose-your-own-adventure styled books. It follows the phone guy, or Ralph, in his last week of working at Freddy Fazbear's, after he's been transitioned to be a night shift security guard. It's a direct prequel to FNAF 1 and a really good book on its own right. I won't spoil too much of it today, so feel free to continue this video if you haven't read the book yet, but honestly you really should. The book is only like $10 to $12 depending on where you buy it, and it's a really good fun time. It's also packed with lore. But speaking of, what does this book say about the Bite of 87? Honestly, a good amount of direct information. Pretty early on too. On page 14, Ralph is thinking about the sorry state of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and he says, "The franchise has truly fallen on hard times thanks to those pernicious rumors about missing kids, and the lingering bad press from the Bite of 87. If only the victim could tell what he did to provoke that attack, but he doesn't talk anymore. Or do much else." Before we talk about what this means for the Bite of 87, I should address that this disproves one of my recent theories in a pretty major way. I've been of the belief that Cassie's dad is the protagonist of Help Wanted 2. Not only that, but I also believe he's the Bonnie bully. All of that is pretty agreeable, and I feel like a lot of people are on that train. I went a step further and suggested that he was also Jeremy Fitzgerald from FNAF 2. Therefore, he was the victim of the Bite of 87, and it messed with his memory. He forgot a lot of specifics, but he remembered that he loved Fazbear's, and that's why later in life he works at the Pizzaplex. But if this book is true, and after the Bite of 87 the victim doesn't talk or do much of anything anymore, doing all of Help Wanted 2 would be a little bit out of the victim's reach. Now, it is still technically possible, but I'm going to take this line as a pretty solid deconfirmation of Cassie's dad being the guy who worked at FNAF 2 who got bit in the Bite of 87. I do, however, still think he's the protagonist of Help Wanted 2 and the Bonnie bully. Anyway, what's interesting here is that Ralph mentioned that the victim provoked the attack. The way Ralph describes the victim here feels like the victim is an adult. After all, Ralph has a daughter and is generally very kind and caring when thinking and talking about kids. So to me, it would be really weird and callous and out of character for him to see this accident of a kid who lost their frontal lobe and then go on to blame the victim. The way Ralph talks here, it feels like he's talking about an adult that should have known better. Like, sure, it's still the fault of Fazbear's, but a lot less grace is given to adults when something like this would happen. But that's not the only piece of information we get that points to the victim being an adult. On page 29, Ralph mentions this anecdote. "But like you said in one of your training videos for the restaurant, you can't spell team without M and E. After the Bite of 87, you heard some of the staff twist that around to, you can't spell team without M-E-A-T. You didn't much appreciate that. People deal with tragedy and loss in their own ways, sometimes with humor. But hey, at least it shows they were listening during orientation." The fact that after the Bite of 87, the staff starts cracking jokes that their team is equivalent to meat, to me says that it was actually one of the staff members that was bitten. After all, if some random person got attacked by the animatronics, why would the team be meat here? There's another instance that helps to double down this interpretation on page 166. In the aftermath of the Bite of 87, staff spread tips around the restaurant of how to slow or stop the animatronics if they ever attacked again. You put a stop to those harmful rumors, once again earning the title of the Employee of the Month. Later on, one of the survival strategies suggested at the time was shining a bright light into the animatronics' eyes to disorient them, and temporarily lock them in position until they reset their sensors and recalibrated their programming. And finally, that little trick might work on another animatronic, but Chica loves being in the spotlight, and she's about to make you part of a show you will never forget. He says that because we try it on Chica and we die because it didn't work. But this is particularly interesting to me. If staff members were sharing around rumors of how to protect yourself from animatronics, again, this lines up with the idea that one of the staff members was attacked. It's also notable that it mentions this flashlight technique would work on a different animatronic, just not Chica. There is one more somewhat somewhat lore impactful mention of the Bite of 87, because it's mentioned a few more times in this book, but just in passing. But on one of the endings, and I won't specify context for spoilers here, Freddy is looming over your face. And Ralph mentions, "You wonder what it will be like living without your frontal lobe," which for a second leaves me to wonder if this book is implying Freddy did the Bite of 87. So all in all, what is this information trying to tell us? That Freddy did it? I don't think so. At first, I thought it was a shoo-in, honestly, for Foxy. After all, in FNAF 2, Withered Foxy is the only animatronic that can be fully stopped with the flashlight. Granted, every animatronic gets stunned for some time when being flashed with the flashlight, but specifically Foxy is the only one that it fully protects you from. So is there anything else in this book that could possibly lead us to Foxy being the true culprit of the Bite of 87? Well, yes. A couple weeks ago, I made a YouTube short talking about my findings related to the Bite of 87 in this book, and a lot of people in the comments mentioned I forgot something. One very clear piece of evidence that can further link Foxy to the Bite of 87, and I'm kicking myself for forgetting to put it in that short, because on the page that I kept notes on, this big, huge page that I kept notes on, you probably can't see it in the lighting, literally the second note I left while reading through this book is page 18 was 87 bite from Foxy, and I completely forgot to talk about what's said on page 18. So what is said on page 18? When talking about Foxy, we get everything about this animatronic screams not for kids, which is probably why his attraction has been marked out of order for the reopening. Though as far as you know, Mark, this is important. Though as far as you know, he's never bitten any kids, and kids is italicized. We're already pretty sure that the victim of the Bite of 87 was a staff member. Again, the staff members started comparing the team to meat, they were sharing ways to protect themselves, Ralph talks about the victim like they were an adult, and even in FNAF 2, the phone guy mentions, the phone guy was probably Ralph in FNAF 2 as well, but he mentions that the animatronics are perfectly fine with the kids, but they're staring and being weird and standoffish with the adults. Combine that with this sentence in the book that says he never bit any kids. One of my favorite things about the English language is that the sentence meaning changes depending on which word is stressed in that sentence, and the words kids here is stressed. Let me give you a different example. The sentence, "I never said Fazbear killed those kids," has 7 different meanings depending on how it's said. "I never said Fazbear killed those kids" means that somebody else said it. "I never said Fazbear killed those kids" means that I thought it or wrote it, just didn't say it. "I never said Fazbear killed those kids," meaning I said somebody else did. "I never said Fazbear killed those kids" means that I said Fazbear did something else to those kids. "I never said Fazbear killed those kids" means that I said Fazbear killed a different group of kids. And finally, most importantly, "I never said Fazbear killed those kids" means that I said the people Fazbear killed weren't kids. So the sentence from the book, "although he never bit any kids," directly implies that Foxy did bite an adult. All this to say, the signs from this book, in my opinion, all point to Withered Foxy being the true culprit of the Bite of 87. Not only that, but we get the full context. During the day while the animatronics were free roaming, one of the staff members provoked Withered Foxy, and in return he bit him right on the head, destroying his frontal lobe and the reputation of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. After all, if Mangle's jump scare was good enough evidence to make them suspect number 1, what about Withered Foxy's jump scare? So is this confirmation that Withered Foxy is the culprit of the Bite of 87? Not really. There's very little ever confirmed in this franchise. But I will say, this, I think, is the most strong evidence we've ever had for a culprit of the Bite of 87. So moving forward, I'm just going to assume it was Withered Foxy until I'm proven otherwise. And really quick side note, this book also confirms the Unwithered designs were never a thing. That being, the Withered variants that look different from the classics actually looked different in the original Freddy Fazbear's. The book briefly touches on that the weird drastic change was from an attempt to redesign, like FNAF 2 suggests. They always looked like the originals. But what do you think? Have I convinced you on Withered Foxy, or do you still think somebody else did the Bite of 87? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. In the meantime, if you want to know what this book says about It's Me, last week's video delves way more into that, and a lot more about what the animatronics are truly like. So you can watch that right here. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #ToastTart or put it in the official Discord. A huge thank you to the best channel members, the Dough Risers, and until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.